This is the longest polishing I have ever done. The situation is this: my client, while on vacation in India, ordered silver earrings with sapphires from a local jeweler, but she was not satisfied with the quality of the work. The main complaint was that the earrings somehow do not shine, and she asked me to polish them. In essence, the pieces were made for the gemstones, but on the ear they looked like cheap jewelry. Not knowing how to fix it, as usual, I got to work. Examining the piece under a microscope, I discovered that most of the stones were set with glue. This means that no matter how much you polish, they won't shine. I mentioned this earlier in one of the previous ones. Well, of course, the terrible surface treatment also prevents shine. This is especially visible on the back. First of all, I decided to get rid of what makes shine impossible. Namely, I decided to dissolve all the glue in acetone. I put the earrings in a jar and left them to soak for several hours. For some reason, the small cubic zirconia pieces on the earrings were different sizes, and the smaller stones fell out on their own in acetone, and the larger pieces became very loose. Also, the acetone dissolved the glue that held the pearls. In short, I removed all the glued stones and began processing. I sanded the areas I could reach with sandpaper of different grit sizes. It was easy to reach. At this stage, I was still hoping to get off lightly. After sanding, I placed the earrings in a magnetic tumbler. This is a device where small polished metal needles fly around in one container under the influence of a magnetic field, processing the surface of the jewelry piece. After tumbling, a few more stones fell out and a couple of pins on which the pearls had to be soldered with a laser, and since most of the stones had already fallen out, I decided to remove the rest, especially since they were barely held in place and could easily be pushed out with an ordinary needle. Since the stones were no longer in the way, I decided to secure the earrings with kit paste and shape them more or less correctly. Cutting, that is, slicing with a grabber, the so-called mirrors and prongs. Unfortunately, the holes for the stones were already drilled crooked, and the set sapphires also sometimes got in the way, therefore achieving perfect cutting is not possible. But it's still much better than what it was before, because the original cubic zirconias were all crooked and with scratches. So that the work done does not lose its shine, I decided to secure new stones from my stock. The main work to restore the shine is completed. And then my gaze fell on the central transitional prongs. They were done so horribly that I couldn't ignore them. A clumsy attempt at an incision and a crookedly set small cubic zirconia. No matter how you polish here, this will never shine. So I decided to make a proper incision on them and place bigger stones. I drilled out the hole, thus aligning them in the center, and with a bulber I prepared the seating places. Then with a graver I began forming the so-called mirrors. This is when special mirrored walls are formed around the stone from the metal, with the graver descending under the stone at 45 degrees or more. Thanks to such undercutting, the stone appears larger and better shines better. Usually this type of cut is made for diamonds in very expensive jewelry, and it is precisely the presence of such undercuts that distinguishes budget jewelry from luxury ones. Finished with the cubic zirconia. Now we need to tidy up the metal, thoroughly polish everything that can be reached, first with felt, then with a brush, then I assemble all the hanging parts and solder them with a laser. By the way, the Indian craftsman didn't have a laser welder, so he just placed and pressed these rings. Well, almost a home stretch. I polished the soldered areas and thoroughly cleaned the earrings with ultrasound. Next is time for galvanization, and this time I will use the method of restoring the shiny coating that all network producers of mass-market goods use. That's because it's impossible to perfectly polish this item anyway. It worked out. I degreased the earrings and placed them in a solution of shiny nickel for several hours to fill all the pores and make the areas shine that polishing couldn't reach. After that, I coated the earrings with rhodium to prevent allergic reactions from the nickel and give the items a brilliant white color. Now the only thing left is to glue the pearls in place. However, after examining them under a microscope, I decided to replace the pearls too. Fortunately, I had a supply of all kinds of pearls on strings. They were of course not perfect, but much better than those that were on the earrings. I unstrung 2 strands and selected the reasonably round ones, but unfortunately the pearls wouldn't fit on the post, and I had to drill each piece by hand. And also a puzzle needed to be assembled, because not only were the pearls uneven, but the studs between the sapphires were soldered at different distances. This meant some pearls fit and some did not. Finally, after adjusting the stones into place, I glued them, pearls, and let them dry. All done, the earrings are ready. It's certainly not high jewelry art, but it turned out much better than before. At least the task is accomplished and the earrings now shine everywhere. If before it was noticeable that it was silver or costume jewelry, now the earrings look more like white gold with diamonds.